these people keep coming back to me. All right, are the kids out? Wait, I still see a whole bunch of kids in here. All right, if you would, open your Bibles to Matthew chapter 12. Matthew chapter number 12. I'm going to do something a little bit different. We are in our Freedom Months. And there's one who's got us captive. And I want to speak on it this morning. And I feel like the Lord has laid this on my heart. I usually don't preach on things like this. I don't have a problem teaching on tithing, and I don't have a problem teaching on missions. Here's the reason why. Those are explicitly explained in the Scriptures. The way that you and I get blessed is, number one, we tithe. Number two, we give to missions. If you want that verse that says all your needs shall be supplied, God shall supply all your needs, in context, that's talking about giving to missions. Tithing. If you want the windows of heaven to open up on you, according to Malachi chapter 3, tithe. And by the way, it's tithes and offerings. But I'm going to speak about another offering and the freedom that we need to, that has, or the thing that has us captive as a church is our property manager. And of course, we brought up wanting to get this building. And by the way, in the background, Jay has been doing some checking up on what we need to do financially to be ready to make a purchase. And we're nowhere near it. And so what I want to talk about this morning, in a roundabout way, is encouraging us about this matter of giving to the building fund. Now, like I said, this isn't my style. This isn't what I do. I am not a fundraiser. That's not. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to preach about it once. I'm going to hang up a banner. And then we're just going to let it go and let God do what He does. But I feel like there's some things that you and I need to do, and small things. And that's what we're going to look at. The small things that people need to do, and God will work a great miracle. And I use the miracles of Jesus Christ to prove this. You're in Matthew chapter 12. Let's pick up in verse number 10. We're going to end at verse 13. That's why I saw the number 3, and I was like... Matthew chapter 12 and verse number 10, behold, there was a man which had his hand withered. And they asked him, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day, that they might accuse him? And he said unto them, what man shall there be among you that shall have one sheep, and if it fall into a pit on the Sabbath day, will he not lay hold on it, lift it out? How much then is a man better than a sheep? By the way, what's the answer to that question? Isn't a man way better than a sheep? By the way, man's way better than the saguaro cactus in Arizona, and way better than the environment. The whatever little squirrel. Uh-oh, you're pointing. Okay. Whatever little squirrel. I know when we were in Riverside County, they stopped a lot of home building projects because of some squirrel. It wasn't that we were obliterating their home, we were stressing out the squirrel. Well, how do you know you're stressing the squirrel? Is the squirrel coming up and saying, hey, I got some problems now? You're making a little too much noise over there, building those houses. I mean, how do you know that you're stressing the squirrel out? So how much better is a man than a sheep? He goes on and by the way, he's speaking to these Pharisees and says, you guys would go out and get a sheep on the Sabbath day. Wherefore is it lawful to do well on the Sabbath days? Verse 13, then saith he to the man. And here's what I want you to pay attention to. What did he tell the man to do? Now, could Jesus Christ just have healed us? Hey, guy, I want you to stand right there. Hold on a second. And then blam, his arm just goes right out like this, nice and strong. Couldn't he have just done that? But didn't he have the man just do a little thing? Now, how hard is it to do this? Well, if you had a gimpy arm, how hard would that be? Have you seen, you've seen some people that had like a little tiny forearm and their hands always curled up like this, and it's only about yay long. That's how I'm imagining this man is. And so his arms curled up like this. How hard is it for him to stretch that out? Well, it might be a little bit hard. I'm just thinking all he's got to do is this. And by the way, all he had to do, and Jesus said, stretch forth thine hand. And all he had to do was reach out his arm, and then what happened? Man, that forearm grew, his hand straightened out, his wrist straightened out, and his arm was just like his other arm. But what did the man have to do? And like I said, could Jesus have just healed him? He's standing there like this. Don't you think that it would have been obvious if Jesus would have healed him on the Sabbath day in front of those Pharisees, and all of a sudden that guy's arm just went out like this? Don't you think everybody else would have noticed it? Anyways? But do you see that the Lord had the man do just a small thing? Keep that in mind. Let's go to John chapter number 9. John chapter number 9. By the way, was that a great miracle? It was to that guy, wasn't it? It was to that guy. Matthew chapter 9. John chapter 9. John chapter 9. I might need to stop and pray again. Get my mind right. John chapter 9 and verse number 1. And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. All right, so he's a man. And what has he been since birth? Blind. Is never seeing the blue sky, never seeing a rain cloud, never seeing a tree, never seeing a cardinal. We have a cardinal family living in our backyard. We also have an Oriole family. So it's black and gold, and it is stark, man, it is stark contrast black and gold, and it's beautiful. Never see that. Never seen a flower. He doesn't know what color blue is. He doesn't know what color green is. We can say red. You know, I heard when dealing with blind people, they would give them something in their hand. Like if they want to do red, they would give them something almost too hot for them to hold on to, and they would say, this is the color red. Then at blue, they would give them something cold in their hand. They would say, this is the color blue. And so they would associate it with a sensation. That's this man. He's blind from his birth. Verse number 2, and his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, neither hath this man sinned nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. What work do you think is going to be made manifest? Verse number 4, I must work the works of him that sent me. While it is day, the night cometh when no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. What has this guy never seen? He only knows darkness. I am the light of the world. When he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground, made clay of spittle, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with clay, and said unto him, what? See. It's not so obvious for a blind man that he is now seeing, to the outside public, right? Now, the guy with the gimpy arm, that would have been obvious if he's just standing there and Jesus would have healed him and his arm would have come out, and, full length, and he's like, hey, look what I can do now, and work a ratchet. Now, back then, they didn't have ratchets, but have you ever tried to work a ratchet with the wrong hand? You get that thing going all kinds of ways, and you're not doing anything. He could work a ratchet, and he's been doing it with this hand his whole life. But it's not as obvious if you're blind and all of a sudden you can see. It's not obvious to anybody else. So he didn't just say, see. What did he tell him to do? Go and wash in the pool at Siloam. Didn't he tell the blind man to go do something? By the way, was he seeing yet? I don't think so either. He spat on some ground, he made some clay, he put the clay on his eyes, and so not only can he not see, but now he's got mud on his eyes, right? And, and he had to have somebody lead him to the pool at Siloam, and as soon as he went down into that pool and the water touched his eyes, wash that mud off. Well, let's continue reading and see what happened. Verse number 7, he said unto him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. And he went his way, therefore, and washed, and came seeing. The neighbors, therefore, and they which before had seen him that he was blind, said, is this not he that sat and begged? Some said, this is he. Others said, he is like him. But he said, I am he. And so we got everybody talking about the guy in front of the guy. And so the guy finally says, no, I'm the guy. All right? Is there an external thing that happened to my face that you can't recognize who I am? Maybe there was a light on his face. Maybe his countenance did change. But they're having this conversation. Have you ever been in that? We're talking about Jay, and everybody's talking about Jay, and then all of a sudden Jay's like, well, I'm standing right here, guys. Why didn't you ask me? Hey, is Jay doing okay? Do you think Jay's doing okay? How's Jay doing today? He's sitting right there. I'm the guy. All right. So do you see that here with me? The others, some said this is he. Others said he's like him, but he's not. But he said, I'm he. Verse 10, therefore they said unto him, how were thine eyes opened? He answered, said, a man that is called Jesus made clay and anointed mine eyes, and said unto me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash. And I went and washed, and I received sight. Amen. What a notable miracle that one was. But again, didn't the man have to do some part? He did a small part, and then God did something great. Do you see that pattern? So we've seen it in two places. Let's go to the third one. You're in John chapter 9. Let's go to John chapter 11. How about raising somebody from the dead? Is that a notable miracle? How do you think Martha and Mary felt about Lazarus being raised from the dead? Do you think it was important to them? How about Lazarus? Now, I don't know if Jesus had Lazarus in a holding pattern or if Lazarus was really in paradise for 4 days. I don't know that. Because if he had been in paradise for 4 days, he'd come out of the tomb and he'd be like, what'd you bring me back for? Yeah, send me back. I don't need back in this world. So again, if Jesus did something special with Lazarus, that might have been it. But, sending somebody to heaven and then bringing them back from heaven, I think that's cruel and unusual punishment. John chapter 11, verse 34. Now, Jesus already by this time knew that Lazarus was dead. He's had a conversation with the disciples. he said, we need to go and see Lazarus. Lazarus is asleep. And the disciples were like, well, if he sleep, he doeth well. That's what the sick man's supposed to do. And Jesus said plainly, he is dead. Verse 34. So he comes. Martha and Mary have accused him. If you'd been here, he'd be alive, and so on and so forth. Verse 34, he said, where have you laid him? They said unto him, Lord, come and see. That verse 35, Jesus wept. Now, a lot of people think that Jesus wept because Lazarus was dead. Why did he wait to weep until right outside the tomb when he already knew? Matter of fact, he had to explain and say it pointedly to his disciples. Why would people think that Jesus wept when he was at the tomb and he didn't weep when Lazarus died back here? He was weeping because of those that were around him, the living ones. He was weeping because Martha and Mary came up to him and accused him. If you'd have been here, he wouldn't be dead. And he's already preached, I am the resurrection. If you believe in me, you're going to have life. He's already said that. And then he said it again to them. And then those that are around him. Well, let's look. Verse 36, then said the Jews, behold how he loved him. No. I mean, he did, but that's not why he's weeping. And some of them said, could not this man which opened the eyes of the blind, didn't we look at that, have caused that this man should not have died? Do you see the accusations flying? Jesus, therefore, again groaning in himself, cometh to the grave. It was a cave, and a stone laid upon it. Jesus isn't sad because Lazarus is dead. He's sad because of the living that's around him. Do you think Lazarus was a believer? If he wasn't before, he is now. By the way, he was before. He is now. Look at what little thing he had the people do. Verse number 39, Jesus said, take ye away the stone. Do you think he could have just said, Lazarus come forth, and rolled the stone his own self? And everybody would have seen it, and everybody would have still been impressed with the raising of Lazarus? But look at what he had the people do. Again, a small thing. Take away the stone. Then Martha, Jeffrey, his sister, by now he stinketh. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, said unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he hath been dead 4 days. By the way, that is important. The Jews, their tradition, by their law, if you've been dead 3 days, more than 3 days, then corruption is touching your body. Your body will start to corrupt. And so that's why Martha said that. Not because Lazarus hadn't taken a bath. Not because he's a boy. All girls think boys stink. That's why I'm picking on Jay. It doesn't matter. But Martha, being a good sister, had to point out, Lord, by now he stinks. For he had been dead 4 days. So Jesus waited until corruption touched the body to let everybody else know that he was about to perform a notable miracle. Verse 40. Jesus saith unto her, said I not unto thee that if thou wouldst believe, thou shouldst see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. Boy, he's speaking in past tense, isn't he? He's speaking in past tense there, isn't he? Lord, I'm thankful that you have heard me. And I knew that thou hearest me always, but because of the people which stand by, I said it out loud. Can we add those words? I said it out loud. that they may believe that thou hast sent me. And when he had thus spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. By the way, if he'd have just said, come forth, everything that had been dead would have come back to life. You want to talk about power? God is standing in the midst of everybody. You think God has the power to raise everybody up? He will in the resurrection. He's going to raise everybody up. So if Jesus wasn't specific, everything would have come up. Boy, that would have been a day. That'd have been a day. But he had to say, Lazarus, come forth. So that everything else that was dead knew that they were supposed to stay dead. Lazarus was the only one that had permission to come up. Verse 44, and he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot, with grave clothes, and his face was bound with the napkin. And Jesus saith unto them, do you think he could have dropped all those cloths off of him? By the way, how's Lazarus coming forth? That reminds me of a bad movie. Doesn't Jesus say go over there and loose the bandages? Loose him and let him go. By the way, after they loosed him, it says, and let him go. I wonder if he was going to have a praise fit. Whoa! I was starting to stink in there. Thank God he opened up and let some air in. But again, do we see God had those that were around do a little thing, and then he did a notable miracle. All right, so we looked at 3. Do you guys see a pattern? All right, a lot of times in the scriptures when Jesus healed, it just says he healed them all. But here's some examples of personal testimonies of those that were healed. It says Jesus had them do a little thing. He had them do a little thing. All right, let's that was all introduction. Let's go to Exodus chapter 35. Exodus chapter 35. Now, is it biblical to talk about a building offering, a building fund? I believe it is. In Exodus chapter 35, and we'll pick up in verse 21. Exodus chapter 35 and verse 21. By the way, is it a building offering because pastor wants a building offering? Is it a building offering because you want a building? All right, we already talked about me. We know how I feel. What about you guys? Wouldn't you like to have your own building? Wouldn't you like to be investing in the church instead of investing in Volk properties? So it's an offering for you. No, we're still missing the boat. Exodus chapter 35 and verse 21. Who really wants to have a building that says Old Pueblo Baptist Church on it? Who really wants to see people come in to a building that has the sign Old Pueblo Baptist Church? Yeah, God does. You know why you're here? It's because I am the greatest preacher that you have ever come across in your life, and you said, man, I got to sit under that guy's preaching all the time. That's what you said. That's right. Amen, brother. Come up here. You got to come up on video and show that. He's putting up his whatever sign. Jay's over here hanging himself with his tie. Justin's got his... Is that why you're here? Is because I am the greatest preacher that you've ever come across? Or did the Lord lead you to this place? By the way, who led me here? We're going to notice that in this offering given to the tabernacle in Exodus chapter 35, starting verse 21. And they came everyone whose heart stirred him up, and everyone whom his spirit made willing, and they brought, what are those next couple of words? The Lord's offering to the work of the tabernacle of the congregation, for all his service, and for the holy garments. And they came both men and women, and as many as were willing-hearted. They brought bracelets and earrings and rings and tablets and all jewels of gold. Every man offered, what are those next couple of words? Offered an offering of gold to who? Unto the Lord. And every man with whom was found blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen and goat's hair and red skins of rams and badger skins brought them. Every one that did offer an offering of silver and brass brought the Lord's offering. And every man with whom was found shittim wood for any work of the service brought it. And all the women that were wise-hearted did spin with their hands and brought that which they had spun, both blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen. And all the women whose hearts stirred them up in wisdom spun goat's hair. Don't bring goat's hair, please. And the rulers brought onyx stones and stones to be set for the ephod and for the breastplate, and spice and oil for the light, and for the anointing oil and for sweet incense. The children of Israel, what? Brought a willing offering unto the Lord. Well, the pastor's up there preaching, and he's always talking about money, and all he ever wants us to do is bring money, and I'm doing it because I have to do. Is that what that sounds like? Moses is always up there, and he parts the Red Sea, and he causes water to come out of a rock, and he makes manna rain from the sky. But then it comes time for the tabernacle. He wants us to, he's preaching on money. Is that what that sounds like here? Or does that word willing have the idea of, man, the people want to have the Lord to have his house? Does that what it sound like? That's what it sounds like to me. They brought a willing offering, and then unto the Lord, not to Moses. And every man and woman whose heart made them willing to bring for all manner of work which the Lord had commanded to be made by the hand of Moses. And Moses said unto the children of Israel, see, the Lord hath called by name Bezaleel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and hath filled him with the Spirit of God, and wisdom, and understanding, and in knowledge, and in all manner of workmanship, and to devise curious works, to work in gold, and in silver, and in brass, and in cutting of stones, to set them, and in carving wood, to make all manner of cunning work, any manner of cutting work. And he hath put in his heart that he may teach both he and Aholiab, the son of Hisamach, of the tribe of Dan. Them hath he filled with wisdom of heart to work all manner of work of the engraver and the cunning workman and the embroiderer in blue and in purple and scarlet and fine linen, and the weaver, and of the weaver, even of them that do work, and of those that devise cunning work. So God has raised up these guys to be masters, and then they're going to have apprentices under them to do the work. That's what all of those were saying. And these two guys, verse number 1, then wrought Bezaleel and Aholiab, and every wise-hearted man in whom the Lord hath put wisdom, the Lord put wisdom and understanding to know how to work all manner of work for the service of the sanctuary according to all that the Lord had commanded. And Moses called Bezaleel and Aholiab and every wise-hearted man in whose heart the Lord had put wisdom, even everyone whose heart stirred him up to come into the work to do it. And they received of Moses all the offering. So these guys received of Moses the offering that the people had willingly brought for the Lord, which the children of Israel had brought for the work of the service of the sanctuary to make it withal. And they brought yet unto him What are those next two words? Free offerings. Every morning. And all the wise men that wrought all the work of the sanctuary came every man from the work which they made. And they spake unto Moses, saying, This people bring much more than enough for the service of the Lord, which the Lord commanded to make. And Moses gave commandment that they caused it to be proclaimed throughout the camp, saying, Let neither man nor woman make any more work for the offering of the sanctuary. So the people were restrained from bringing. Said no treasurer ever. For the stuff that they had was sufficient for all the work to make it. And what are those next three words? And too much. Now, do you think these people had a $1.8 million amongst them? Do you think these people had, the tons and tons of stuff? Or do you think that they were doing just a little bit and then the Lord was just throwing some more in there? They brought a free will offering every morning for the work of the tabernacle, for God's house. And they brought too much. Like, and I kind of made light of it. Said no treasurer ever, or pastor ever. I've been in several building projects in my life, not mine, but involved in them. We built a gym in our home church. Our pastor never did get up there and say, Stop giving to the building fund because we have too much. In our second home church, the church we went to in Bible school, they built another building because we outgrew the sanctuary that we were in. So we built a gym, and then we converted the gym into the sanctuary, and then the old sanctuary become the office buildings. Then we had to build another building. Pastor there never did say, Stop giving. You gave too much. I'd like to be the first one in my ministerial career, in my Christian life, to ever have to tell the church, please stop giving. You want to talk about a miracle. Number one, to get the pastor to say those words. Number two, for us to be able to do that. I mean, come on, how many of you are just sitting there billionaires? Anybody? Like I said, I'm not a fundraiser. I'm not a guy that goes out and looks for people and I can't do that. So any billionaires just sitting in here, you got $1 billion sitting in the bank account? 10 of you. I see you raising your eyebrows. Yes. You don't want to really let me know because then you'll think that I'm going to come over and say, give them the Zeke look. We're not, are we? Most of us are on fixed incomes, aren't we? And it's hard, isn't it? And then you got that stinking pastor up there showing us these verses. Well, if we just do a little bit, God's going to do a lot. Huh? You want to see that? How much do you think God could do? How much do you think God could do? I mean, we looked at several examples, didn't we? The guy that had the withered hand, what did he do for him? Gave him a livelihood, didn't he? How about the guy that was blind? No longer was he begging. Now he's able to see what the color blue looks like, to see what green looks like, see what the sun looks like. He felt the heat of the sun. Now he got to see it. He's been listening to the birds singing. Now he gets to see them. He got to feel his children. Now he gets to see them. He got to feel his grandchildren. Now he gets to see them. You think that was a big miracle? What about Lazarus? Raise somebody from the dead. There's only a couple of times in the scriptures that that's happened. Only one time ever did a leader that I've read in the scriptures, did a leader ever get up and say, stop giving? And it was to the Lord's house. So here's an encouragement. If we do a little bit, what do you think God would do? Think He could do a notable miracle amongst us? Don't you think that a crowd this size, and we're not a big crowd, you think a crowd this size would be able to get a piece of property and land? If we did a little bit, do you think the Lord would do a big something? So again, the encouragement is, let's just do a little bit. If you look at the tithe envelope that's in the seat back in front of you, there's a little line on there that says building. So it says tithes, missions, building, and then other. Don't put a lot. I'm not asking you to put half your paycheck in. I'm not even asking you to put in a percentage of your paycheck. I'm just asking you to put something. How hard was it to do this? That's doing something, isn't it? How hard is it to go to a pool and just wash? How hard was it for them to push the stone out of the way? It's a little bit. Let's do a little bit. If we do a little bit, it becomes a lot bit. And the Lord multiplies it. And the Lord will, Lord willing, get us to a place where I'm going to have to say, you know that building fund line on the tithing envelope? Stop filling that line out. Stop. The treasurer says there's too much. If we do a little bit, man, what could the Lord do? So I want to encourage you, do a little bit. I mentioned this before, and I was going to try to put a graphic up. I got a banner. It's a vertical banner. We put a building on it and a crane, and there's a hard hat, and then there's some thermometer markings, and the goal is $100,000. That's the top. We're already at 15. We're already at 15,000 on that thermometer. But if we start giving just a little bit, 10 bucks, 20 bucks, 50 bucks, 100 bucks, we just start putting in a little bit on that building fund line, we can watch that we're going to put a big red arrow on it where we are. And each month, Lord willing, we're going to update that and see what the Lord's going to do. I am going to go outside of the church. We belong to a fellowship here in Arizona. They like to give. I'm going to go outside the church and ask. But realistically, we need 10% at least of the purchase price. And if the purchase price is $1.8 million, what's 10% of that? $180,000. Now we're going to try to, I'm not going to put that online. We're going to try to get a better price, but still 10% is what we're looking at for any property. If we do a little bit, what can the Lord do with us and with that? If you'll, like I said, ladies, don't spin goat's hair. That just doesn't feel comfortable. I realize there were reasons for it in the tabernacle. There were, layers and layers on the roof, and part of that had to be goat's hair. But if we do a little bit, I believe the Lord will do a great work in and through us. And how encouraging would it be for us to be able to walk into our own building and say, this is our building, right? But better yet, we wouldn't say this is our building, would we? Look what the Lord did. This is the Lord's building that He gave to us because we stretched forth the hand. We went to the pool and washed. We rolled away the stone. We gave a little bit, and a little bit here, and a little bit there. All right, let's stand to our feet with our heads bowed and our eyes closed. Remember, throughout the passage here in Exodus, it was a free will offering, and it was to the Lord. So don't say, well, Pastor's making me do this. He's going to be checking up on me. By the way, I look at every single tithe envelope, and if I don't see a proper amount on there, I stick J on you. Or Betty. Has either one of them ever called you about, hey, you need to put more in your envelope? Boy, that would be bad, wouldn't it? How many of you would still be here? Me either. Because I'd get that. So we're not going to be checking, but it's a free will offering between you and God. And let's be obedient to Him and be willing to Him, and let's see what He will do for us. So in this invitation time, just pray, Lord, how can I be of help? Lord, what can I do? Even if it's $1, if it's $5, do it. Don't think, well, I can't give a lot, so I'm not going to give anything. Put $1 in. Put $1 in. Let's see what God can do with $1. Let's see what God can do. All right, I appreciate your attention this morning. Let's be dismissed in a word of prayer. We still got some goodies over here if you want to come over and grab one of those. Remember to come back at 6 o'clock for our final night of VBS. Looking forward to that, both adults and kids. And so, like I said, come back at 6 for that. All right, let's be dismissed in a word of prayer. Father, again, we're thankful for the day. Thank you for the privilege we have to be in your house, to lift up praises to your name, to worship you in giving, to worship you by opening your word and preaching your word. And I pray, Father, that as we saw examples in your word of the people doing a little and you doing a great miracle, I pray, Father, you'd perform that miracle with us as well. We think about getting our own building. We're almost held captive by this property manager. I pray, Father, that you would free us from that. And I pray that you'd help us again to have a building. Not necessarily this one that we're looking at. We just want your will. Now, if this one is your will, amen. If it's not, amen. I pray that you would lead us to that you would have for us, but help us to do our part so that you can work your miracle. we'll be sure to give you the praise for that. As we go home, I pray that you take us home safely, bring us back at the next appointed time. And again, in all things, we give you the thanks and the praise for it all.